The story starts in a quiet place, far from busy streets and traffic. Mrs. Parker lives alone, but rents out a barn to Clay, who is a beekeeper. One day, while managing her money, Mrs. Parker gets a virus warning on her laptop. She calls the number on the screen, which connects her to a phishing company. The leader of the company, Garnett, wants to show his trainees how to scam people. Garnett tells Mrs. Parker that the warning is from a program already on her laptop and says she needs to update it. Since Mrs. Parker isn't good with computers, Garnett offers to help her remotely. She just needs to download a small program called Friendly Friend, which gives Garnett access to her laptop. As soon as she does this, Garnett mutes the call and shows everyone in the company her bank accounts, life insurance, pension, and a charity account with $2 million. Garnett starts stealing money, but Mrs. Parker doesn't realize anything is wrong yet. Garnett assures Mrs. Parker that it's normal and promises to refund her subscription fee, supposedly transferring it to her account. When she tries to log in to verify the transfer, she sees a deposit of $50,000. It's all part of Garnett's plan, using sympathy. Mrs. Parker, trying to help, uses her master password to wire the money back. This is where Garnett succeeds, emptying all her accounts instantly. Mrs. Parker's screen turns back on and she finds her accounts empty. Shocked, she gets notifications of fraudulent activities, and the cruel reality sets in. Meanwhile, Clay is extracting honey and sets aside a jar for Mrs. Parker. He visits her in the evening to deliver it, but she doesn't answer the door, so he lets himself in. The fire alarm is blaring, and something feels wrong. In the next room, he finds a fired gun. Suddenly, he's ambushed by Verona, Mrs. Parker's daughter, who tells him to drop to his knees. Clay expresses sympathy, explaining that Mrs. Parker has taken her own life. At this point, Clay becomes the main suspect. Verona doesn't believe her mother killed herself. Clay calmly answers the agent's questions, explaining he was just bringing her a jar of honey. His story checks out, and when Verona checks her mother's accounts, she realizes the financial losses might have led to her mother's actions. Gunshot residue tests are negative for Clay, and Mrs. Parker's fingerprints are on the gun, leaving only one explanation. Verona apologizes for being harsh, but it's understandable. To learn more about the person her mother knew, she invites Clay for coffee. Verona reveals that Clay reminded her mother of Verona's deceased brother, a former Marine raider. Mrs. Parker always praised her brother more for mowing the lawn than she did Verona for graduating from the FBI Academy. Verona found out someone stole all her mother's money. She got scammed. Verona talked to an agent from the cyber crimes office. The agent said the crew who did this has been working for years, and they still don't know their names. Verona doesn't think they will ever be caught. Clay thinks stealing from elderly people is like hurting a child, but worse, because there's no one to protect them. Often it goes unnoticed or no one cares. But Verona cares and promises to seek revenge. Clay leaves to take care of his beehives. Wanting justice for Mrs. Parker, he contacts the Beekeepers, a secret group he used to be part of, asking for help finding Garnett's crew. Soon, Clay gets an address for the scammers, a call center run by Garnett. Clay arrives with 2 gas canisters. The security tells him to leave, but he's there to burn it down. He fights his way inside and gets everyone's attention, asking them to repeat, "I will never steal from the weak and vulnerable again." They laugh, so he pours gasoline everywhere to make his point. Garnett tries to stop him, but Clay deals with the security guards easily, being an ex-special agent. He then places bombs on the gas canisters that will explode with the next call made to the center. As another family calls the center, Clay is already out and the place blows up. At Danforth Enterprises in Boston, Derek Danforth gets a call from Garnett, who tells him about Clay burning down the call center. Garnett explains how Clay easily defeated the security and destroyed the place. A $30 million building is now just a pile of rubble. The worst part is, they have no clue who did it. Derek has to handle this big problem. He goes to his advisor who used to run the CIA, wondering if he can find and deal with Clay. But the advisor wants no part of it. No problem, Derek tells Garnett to log into the cloud and look for anyone connected to their recent deals. Then go American Gangster on that person. In an unsure voice, Garnett promises to get it done. A while later, Verona arrives at the scene. No one can identify the perpetrator, but she's internally celebrating a small victory against these bad guys. Back to where he belongs, Clay is just enjoying his beekeeping. But it's the calm before the storm. Garnett arrives with his mercenaries at Mrs. Parker's place. Noticing Clay driving off, Garnett wants to retaliate and shoots up Clay's beehives. Hearing the shots, Clay activates machines to mask the sound. As they arrive, he lurks in the shadows, forcing them to fire in advance. Clay quietly dismantles Garnett's men one by one. The bad guys never learn not to separate. With Garnett left alone and in a panic seeing his men dead, it's over. Clay cuts off Garnett's fingers, leaving him alive to send a message. During the investigation, Verona receives a notification about a fire at her mother's house. She discovers that the identified bodies are connected to the same company. It clicks for the agents that Clay is responsible. Garnett calls Derek while stopped at a bridge, interrupting his pampering session, expecting good news. Instead, it's been a disaster. Just as Garnett is explaining that Clay is some kind of beekeeper ninja, Clay suddenly drags Garnett out of the car, straps him up, and sends him off the bridge. Picking up the phone, Clay lets Derek know he's next, sending chills down Derek's spine. Derek goes to his big boss, explaining that some mad beekeeper is after him and burned down one of his 20 call centers. It suddenly clicks for Wallace. A beekeeper? He realizes Derek messed up big time, unaware of the dark side of his business. Derek doesn't understand why Wallace is so afraid of this nobody. That nobody is a beekeeper. The beekeeper is a man of focus, commitment, and sheer will. Things Derek knows very little about. Being ex-CIA director, Wallace assures him that there is nothing he can do to help him. The FBI finally starts to piece the puzzle, and are sure there must be a ringleader to all these fraudulent call centers. What's more of a mystery is Clay. He's invisible. The only thing they have on him is his birth certificate. The only explanation, he's in some sort of classified program. Jessica calls Wallace, begging him to look after her son, promising more shares in the company. That's all he wanted to hear. He rings up the "never call me on this line" in the CIA, and with one mention of his dumb employer catching the attention of the beekeeper, she knows it's serious. He needs Janet's help. The manager of the special beekeeper program calls Wallace, informing him that Clay is a retired agent and the current active beekeeper is going to be taking things from here. Still, that doesn't set his mind at ease. Solemnly staring at his honey, Clay's car is rammed from behind. The psycho whips her gun and starts blasting, but Clay's already out. The police don't faze her, and as Clay locks her neck, she finds it amusing. The two go at it, but somehow she struggles to match the unarmed Clay. No problem. A minigun will do the work, blasting the whole gas station. Clay cuts off her finger before driving off. Subsequently, the beekeepers declare neutrality, leaving Wallace on his own. The FBI slowly catches up with Clay's antics, finding Garnett's body and arriving at the gas station scene. The girl is also a ghost, just like their friend they're chasing. What's more, she has a book about beekeeping. The agents surmise that Clay is on his way to Boston. Wallace has gathered together ex-military, explaining to them that a secret organization that isn't disclosed to even the director of the CIA for decades has operated from the shadows. The beekeepers are given all resources and are allowed to act on their own judgment. But now a retired beekeeper has gone rogue and isn't acting in the hive's best interest. He calls the former Special Forces personnel a bunch of babies compared to beekeeper, but maybe with enough of them, they have a chance. Using the psycho woman's finger to enter her facility, Clay has access to all her arsenal and intelligence. Tracking down the base of Derek's operations and stocking up on supplies, Clay sets out to fulfill his promise to Derek. Verona informs the FBI deputy director that 3 crime scenes are connected with Clay, who is connected to a classified program named Beekeeper. He's on his way to Boston, and his next target is 9 Star United, which oversees all of Derek's global scam call centers. The director heard enough, granting the agents full funding to deal with Clay, something that never happens. The FBI SWAT team storms the building, but the private security has it on lock. They settle for a perimeter outside. The team goes through all the other entrances this building has, but there is none. Clay himself confirms it, otherwise he would have used it. He doesn't want to injure anyone unnecessarily, but the SWAT team leaves him no choice. While being surrounded, he somehow just pulverizes 15 armed men and with one of them as a hostage walks in through the front. Meanwhile in the building, the mercenary commander Pettis tries to evacuate anyone who isn't armed, but the ringleader Golden Goose refuses. He arrogantly calls up Derek, who in turn chastises Pettis for not doing his job properly. No one will evacuate. As they applaud the armed men leaving, Clay is amongst them. Throwing a guy around, he silences the floor, and the Golden Goose still doesn't comprehend the situation. But when Pettis' men start blasting, he's quick to kiss the floor. Clay manages to run to the hallway and climb up the ceiling. With one man down as bait, he deals with 2 more. To mask sound, he triggers the fire alarm and pounces on Pettis' weapon, neutralizing a few more before disarming him. Whipping out an axe, Clay grabs a fire extinguisher, blinding Pettis and boinks him out. With more agents on the street, Verona commands them to roll in. Clay sets up wires for his next plan. Just as the mercenaries think they have him cornered in an elevator, he blows the cable wire, taking those who ran out down with the elevator. Crashing at the bottom, the agents prefer to take the stairs anyway. With the mercenary chain of command in disarray, they are just sitting ducks for Clay to pick off in the dark. With all of them dead, the Golden Goose is next on the chopping block. Using stapler as a torture device, Clay wants to know who's above him, explaining in the process why he's doing it. It's all because they messed with the only person that ever took care of him. The Golden Goose finally cracks, showing him the top dogs in this charade. Finally, Verona made her way there. Directly speaking with Clay, she assures him there are laws for these things, but Clay mentions there are things laws can't fix but he can, making his escape as the rest of the agents arrive. For now, they settle for the Golden Goose and his crew. Looking at the laptop, Verona now also knows who Clay's target is. At some luxurious restaurant, Derek is worried sick and Wallace receives the dire news. His mercenary guys are all dead. Maybe it's time to call Derek's mother. Clay can't take action if they're in Jessica's and her people's proximity. Derek loves the idea. Derek rings her up. Without disclosing his Clay situation, he asks if he can visit her and she agrees. Turns out Jessica is the President of the United States of America. No way Clay can exterminate the Queen Bee, right? Verona's friend suggests letting Clay do his thing, but she can't, even if it's the right thing to do. Verona tells the FBI deputy director that Clay is tracking the money. 9-Star United uses data mining to find people without heirs or family and targets their assets. Another company is also involved, used by several U.S. government agencies. Both are run by Danforth Enterprises, founded by Jessica Danforth, who is now the president. Only Verona, Clay, and the deputy director know this, and the deputy director wants it to stay that way. Because of Jessica's link to the scam, more people might be at risk, including the president. At the Danforth Beach House, security is tight and Verona is there to make it tighter. Derek is relaxing with a beer, but Wallace is panicking. He hired an elite team because Yellow has killed a beekeeper before. Jessica is angry no one told her the stakes. The Secret Service welds shut manholes and checks every vehicle. Clay gets into the sewer system, opens a welded manhole, and rides a skateboard to a car. He incapacitates an agent and takes his disguise. With Yellow's kill squad arriving, the place is super secure. Not even Rambo could break in, but did Rambo have timed explosives? Clay changes into a suit to blend in with the guests. Meanwhile, Verona sees the deputy director talking to the president and understands that the truth is coming out. She takes her son to a private room with the deputy director, who expresses his concerns about illegal money. Jessica directs the question to Derek, the head of the business, making him uneasy. Clay is looking for his targets when Verona spots him and alerts the Secret Services. Outside, surrounded by guns, Clay is about to surrender when he causes a distraction by blowing up cars. This allows him to shoot a few agents and make his way inside. Clay wants to minimize deaths, so he takes an agent hostage to ensure safe passage. In the yard, Clay dismantles the kill squad members one by one as he heads towards his main target. A family feud erupts, with Jessica blaming Derek for everything. Jessica didn't know where the illegal money came from but needed it for her campaign. Derek, lacking morals, just wanted the job done. Clay skillfully handles the agents, making his way to the room with Derek and the others. Jessica decides to reveal the truth about Derek's use of data mining software, even if it ruins her. Clay is almost at the room but is stopped by Yellow. They engage in hand-to-hand combat, and Clay, like a Terminator, eventually kills Yellow. Verona is the only one Clay seems to care for. Wallace tries to convince Clay to stop and live a quiet life, but it's personal for Clay. He plants a claymore on the door and sits Wallace down, determined to right the wrongs. As Clay is about to enter, Derek shoots the director and takes his mother hostage when Clay blows up the door and comes in. Verona also arrives, and there's a standoff. Clay tells Verona to choose if she works for the law or for justice. He quickly shoots Derek and escapes. The president is unharmed. Verona has a chance to shoot Clay but chooses justice instead. Clay gives her a final nod before jumping away, where he has a suit and swim gear stashed. He gets away. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.